My wife told the judge, $100,000 a month isn't a demand, it's a need. The courtroom went silent. Then everything backfired on her. I'm 34, and if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting in a courtroom watching my marriage dissolve, I probably would have laughed it off. I thought I had built something that would last. But there I was, staring across the room at the woman I used to share everything with, now sitting next to her attorney, preparing to argue that she deserved more from me than anyone in that room thought reasonable. When our divorce proceedings reached the point of discussing financial support, I thought I had a good idea of what might come. I expected numbers that stung a little, maybe even more than I wanted to pay, but still within the realm of reality. After all, we both had careers, we both made decent money, and we didn't live a lifestyle that could be confused with Hollywood excess. But then she made her request. Your Honor, her attorney began. My client is requesting $100,000 per month in child support and personal expenses. At first, I thought I had misheard. I glanced at my lawyer, who raised his eyebrows like even he couldn't believe it. The judge actually leaned forward as if to make sure the number had been stated correctly. The courtroom felt heavier, like the air itself thickened with disbelief. A few people shifted in their seats. My pulse quickened, but I sat frozen in my chair, unsure if this was real. The judge finally asked her directly, "Why do you believe this amount is justified?" She straightened up, lifted her chin, and said with complete confidence, "This isn't a demand, it's a need." And then came the silence. Not the kind of silence you get when everyone's politely listening. No, this was different. It was the sound of disbelief hanging in the air, everyone in that room quietly questioning if she had really just said what they thought she said. I remember looking at her face, expecting maybe a hint of nervousness, some flicker of self-awareness that she was pushing the limits. But no, she sat there as if what she'd just declared was the most rational statement anyone could make. Like $100,000 a month was as natural as paying the electric bill. The judge didn't say anything at first. He just scribbled notes while the rest of the room stayed dead quiet. I couldn't help but feel the weight of eyes on us. People who had been sitting there for their own cases now suddenly more interested in ours. Inside, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part disbelief, part anger, and a whole lot of exhaustion. I couldn't wrap my head around how someone who once shared my home, my table, and my life could sit there and claim that this was her need. It wasn't about providing for our child. It wasn't about making sure there was a roof, food, or clothes. It was about turning this divorce into a payday. And in that moment, it felt less like a legal proceeding and more like theater. Except the stakes were painfully real for me. The judge finally looked up, and though his expression didn't betray much, I caught a tiny flicker of something. Maybe disbelief, maybe irritation. Either way, I knew this wasn't going to go the way she thought it would. But sitting there in that courtroom, hearing her words echo in my head, this isn't a demand, it's a need, I realized just how far apart our realities had drifted. That was the moment I stopped feeling like this was just a tough chapter in a marriage gone wrong. It became something else entirely, a battle over what was fair, what was right, and what was ridiculous. And the strangest part? Even with all the eyes on her, with the silence stretching out like a spotlight, she didn't flinch. She believed it. After her declaration, the judge cleared his throat and set his pen down. His gaze shifted between her attorney, and me, like he was weighing how much patience he was willing to extend to this circus. "All right," he said calmly. "We're going to review the financial disclosures provided by both parties." My attorney leaned closer and whispered, "This is where things start to matter. Just sit tight." The judge began flipping through the binder of documents, income statements, bank accounts, credit card bills, property records, and the spreadsheet that broke down estimated child-related expenses. I'd gone through all of it the night before with my lawyer, and I knew the numbers well. Diapers, food, health insurance, schooling, extracurriculars. Important, yes, but nowhere near the figure she had thrown out. When the judge started reading the line items aloud, the courtroom's earlier silence turned into something else, a steady undercurrent of quiet disbelief. Monthly child care costs, listed at approximately $2,000. He paused, making a note. Health insurance for the child, covered. Another note. Educational expenses, modest and well documented. And then he looked up. I don't see how we arrive anywhere near $100,000 a month. Her attorney tried to recover, pointing to lifestyle continuity and the importance of maintaining the same standard of living the child had during the marriage. The judge leaned back in his chair, almost amused. Continuity is important. But continuity does not mean extravagance beyond the reality of what's necessary, especially when both parents are fully capable of providing a comfortable environment. Her posture shifted. She wasn't sitting as straight anymore. Her confidence, the same one that filled the room when she had declared her need, began to show cracks. The judge pressed further. Ma'am, you earn a substantial income of your own. You're not financially dependent. You've maintained stable employment, correct? Yes, Your Honor, she replied, her voice quieter now. Then explain to me, he continued, why you believe an additional $100,000 every month, above and beyond your own earnings, is essential to meet your child's needs. The silence this time wasn't shocked, it was heavy. She opened her mouth, but whatever answer she had rehearsed didn't come out the way she wanted. It was the first moment she looked unsure. My lawyer took the opportunity to interject. Your Honor, my client has always been willing to provide fair and reasonable support. But this request is detached from the reality of the situation. The actual costs of raising their child have been documented clearly. Anything above that would serve as personal enrichment, not child support. The judge nodded slightly, flipping back through the documents again. That is how it appears to me as well. For the first time since the proceedings began, I felt the weight lift from my chest. It wasn't over, not yet, but the momentum had shifted. Her attorney tried one last push. Your Honor, we're simply asking that the child be afforded the same lifestyle as when the parties were together. And they will, the judge replied firmly. But a request of this magnitude is not grounded in the child's actual needs. It is, in fact, excessive. I will not entertain it further. I glanced across the room at her. The unwavering confidence she had walked in with was slipping. She fiddled with her pen, avoided eye contact, and shifted in her seat as though she wanted to disappear into the bench. What started as a bold proclamation had begun to unravel under the weight of simple math and fairness. In that moment, I knew she hadn't just overplayed her hand. She'd revealed her priorities. And the judge had seen it too. The judge took a long pause after shutting the binder, his hands folded neatly on the bench. He studied us both in silence for a moment, and the room seemed to hold its breath. I've reviewed the documents, heard the arguments, and considered the request, he began. His voice was steady, firm. There was no mistaking the authority in it. And let me be absolutely clear. The amount requested is not only unreasonable, it is entirely disconnected from the actual needs of this child. My pulse raced, but this time it wasn't from panic. It was from the sense that everything I had been waiting for was finally about to be said out loud. The judge continued, child support is meant to ensure the welfare of the child. It is not meant to serve as a lifestyle subsidy or an avenue for personal financial gain. I felt a quiet relief wash over me. My attorney's pen scratched across his notepad, capturing every word. Across the aisle, though, I saw her shoulders tighten, her lips pressed together like she was forcing herself to remain composed. The judge went on to outline the decision in detail. He listed the real costs: childcare, insurance, schooling, basic living expenses. All of it tallied up, analyzed, and compared with what both of us already earned. Then, with a finality that seemed to echo in the room, he declared, accordingly, support will be set at an amount appropriate to meet these needs, significantly less than what has been requested. The court finds the figure of $100,000 per month not only unjustified but wholly excessive. He named the final number, a fraction of what she had asked for. It was enough to cover every legitimate expense, plus some cushion for unforeseen costs, but nowhere near the windfall she had envisioned. There it was. Clear. Final. I couldn't stop the small exhale that escaped me. I had been holding it in for too long. Her attorney tried to mask disappointment, but the attempt was thin. He gave a polite nod, knowing there was no ground left to stand on. She, on the other hand, sat frozen. It was like her entire body had stiffened, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She had walked into the courtroom expecting a victory that would secure her more than comfort, something close to luxury, masked as necessity. Instead, she was being told that the court saw through it. I looked at her, and for the first time in all these proceedings, I saw something shift in her expression. Not anger, not shock, something quieter, heavier, regret. The courtroom clerk began typing up the notes, the shuffle of papers returning the room to its usual rhythm. But for her, the silence was louder than anything. She didn't look at me, didn't look at the judge. She just stared down at the table in front of her, as if replaying the moment she'd spoken those words. This isn't a demand, it's a need. And now, they had come back to haunt her. Walking into the courtroom, she had held every ounce of confidence. Walking out, she carried something very different. The realization that she had overreached, that her attempt to stretch the truth of need had collapsed in front of everyone. It wasn't just a legal loss. It was a personal one. Because in trying to frame the divorce as her opportunity for gain, she had revealed what mattered most to her, and lost credibility in the process. For me, the decision wasn't a triumph to celebrate. It was more of a sobering moment. Justice had been served, yes, but the damage between us was permanent. Whatever bond had once existed was now replaced by the echo of her own demand, a line she would never be able to take back. When the session adjourned, the sound of chairs scraping against the courtroom floor filled the silence that had hung over the judge's ruling. People gathered their files, whispered to their attorneys, and shuffled toward the doors. I stayed seated for a moment, letting it all sink in. My attorney leaned toward me and said quietly, "That's as fair an outcome as you could have hoped for." I nodded, but my eyes stayed on her. She hadn't moved yet. Her attorney was already packing up, but she just sat there, staring at the closed folder in front of her like it held the weight of everything she thought she deserved and didn't get. Finally, she stood, not with the confidence she'd carried earlier, but with slow, deliberate movements, like each step reminded her of how differently this day had gone from what she had pictured. Outside the courtroom, the hallway was buzzing with people heading to their own hearings. I walked past her, and for a split second, our eyes met. There was no fire in them, no sharpness, just a hollow kind of acknowledgement, like she knew that what had happened inside that room would follow her far beyond today. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left worth saying. Later that evening, after the adrenaline had worn off, I sat at my kitchen table replaying the day in my head. The request, the silence, the judge's words, and then the look on her face when the reality hit. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't even relief, not fully. It was more complicated than that. Because behind the ruling, behind the numbers, was the fact that this was someone I had once loved enough to share a life with. Someone who had once been my partner, not my opponent. And now she had walked into court not just asking for fairness, but demanding something so wildly beyond reason that she ended up undermining herself. And the irony? If she had asked for something realistic, if she had come into that courtroom with humility instead of entitlement, the outcome might have been different. But the moment she said, "This isn't a demand, it's a need," it was over. Her words had been the spark that lit up the entire room, not in her favor, but against her. I think that's the part she'll regret most. Not just the ruling, not just the financial hit, but the memory of everyone watching her conviction crumble in real time. She had exposed herself in a way no cross-examination ever could. For me, the chapter closed in that courtroom. I'll continue being a father, continue providing for my child, and continue living my life without the shadow of that outrageous demand hanging over me. But I can't help wondering what she feels now, sitting alone, thinking about how a single moment of overreach cost her so much. Divorce isn't about winning or losing, at least it shouldn't be. It should be about moving forward in a way that's fair. But she turned it into something else, and in doing so, lost more than just money. She lost the chance to walk away with dignity. And I'll be honest, I didn't walk away feeling like I won. I walked away feeling like I'd just witnessed someone I once cared for create her own downfall. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.